On today's episode, we're going to talk about how Trump can't shake Epstein. Rogan criticizes ICE. Americans are unhappy. Are they justified? Nick Fuentes disses JD Vance again and embraces Gavin Newsom. We'll also talk about the dangerous AI politics for Democrats. Welcome back to the podcast for the 54% of Americans who regularly vote for progress in every election and want to convince their friends and family members to join our majority. This is Majority 54, and I am Ravi Gupta. And today I'm going solo for this final day of 2025. And what a crazy year this has been. And it's ending, exactly how we pictured it would at this point. Trump is flailing on Epstein, and he is punishing his own Republican colleagues. He just vetoed a water bill, seemingly in retaliation for Lauren Boebert, Representative Boebert, supporting the release of the Epstein files. So this was a bill that would bring clean drinking water to Colorado, and it was sponsored by Lauren Boebert and passed unanimously by voice vote from the House and the Senate. And there was also another bill that Trump vetoed that had to do with indigenous populations in Florida. And he was punishing them because I think they didn't support ICE enforcement actions within indigenous territories in Florida. But on the Colorado law, Boebert released the following statement, and I'll read this for you. President Trump decided to veto a completely non-controversial bipartisan bill that passed both the House and the Senate unanimously. Why? Because nothing says American first like denying clean drinking water to 50,000 people in Southeast Colorado, many of whom enthusiastically voted for him in all three elections. I must have missed the rally where he stood in Colorado and promised to personally derail critical water infrastructure projects. My bad. I thought the campaign was about lowering costs and cutting red tape. But hey, if this administration wants to make its legacy blocking projects that deliver water to rural Americans, that's on them. I'm going to continue fighting for Colorado and standing up for our rural communities, our farmers, and every family that serves safe, reliable drinking water. I sincerely hope this veto has nothing to do with political retaliation for calling out corruption and demanding accountability. Americans deserve leadership that puts people over politics. So she seems to be insinuating that this might be about something else, about the Epstein files. There was also an article, a lengthy article in the New York Times that just dropped this past week from Robert Draper, a great political reporter over there. He profiled Marjorie Taylor Greene. And there was one section of this article that I think was head turning. So I'll read from the article here. He said, Trump called Greene to voice his displeasure. This is after Greene had done an event with victims, Epstein victims. Greene was in her Capitol Hill office, and according to a staff member, everyone in the suite of rooms could hear Trump yelling at her as she listened to him on speakerphone. Greene says she expressed her perplexity over Trump's intransigence, and according to Greene, Trump replied, "My friends will get hurt." When she urged Trump to invite some of Epstein's female victims to the Oval Office, she says he angrily informed her that they had nothing to merit the honor. Okay, so this is a guy who will invite Kanye, Kid Rock, etc. to the Oval Office. Apparently had Nick Fuentes at Mar-a-Lago, but the victims of Epstein don't merit the honor. All right, and this just adds to a lot of evidence we have now that Trump has a lot to hide. The longstanding friendship he had with Epstein, information that came to light that suggests that he had been on the plane multiple times, despite saying he'd never been on the plane before. The creepy handwritten letters, the things he said out loud, Trump's own behavior. And yeah, by the way, sending Ghislaine Maxwell to Club Fed, the sort of minimum security prison, the cushy prison, inexplicably still hasn't been explained why he did that. And there are reports that she's getting favorable treatment. So add to that he's explicitly telling Marjorie Taylor Greene that his friends have something to hide here. So that's the best version of events, that Trump is merely covering for his friends. Now, which friends could we be talking about here? Well, Trump himself. Maybe friends is a euphemism for him, but it could also be Steve Bannon, who is in the middle of these files. It could be Alan Dershowitz, who's in the middle of these files. It could be Peter Thiel, right? Those could be some of the friends. It could be others, but obviously all roads seem to lead to Trump on this. He seems to have a lot to hide. And right now his Justice Department seems to be running afoul of the congressional law requiring them to disclose all the documents that they have. This is from the New York Times. The Justice Department is seeking to enlist about 400 lawyers to review roughly 5.2 million pages of Epstein file documents, an effort that is drawing in prosecutors who work on national security and criminal cases and in the U.S. attorney's offices in New York and Florida, according to people familiar with the matter. So 5.2 million documents. Now we're roping in people from national security legal teams. And I think this just gets to the absurdity of where we are right now. Because of so much intransigence, because Trump has been dragging his feet, because we can't trust the director of the FBI and the attorney general. And if we're being honest, because Merrick Garland sat on all these documents for 4 years, we now have people probably who should be working on critical national security cases, keeping our country safe, going after people who might want to attack our country or commit domestic terrorism or what other crimes that we could imagine. Now we're rifling through 5.2 million documents to sort through what to keep in and what to keep out. And we have no faith whatsoever that what's going to emerge from this process is going to be anything that we can stand behind. We've already seen some evidence that they admitted one crucial photo that seemed to be, a little inconvenient for Trump, and they had to put it back in. We have no faith that they're going to release anything that is inconvenient to Trump. So we have these people rifling through 5.2 million documents for what exactly? This does get to the wider problem with everything going on right now with the Trump administration, which is one norm or law after another is being violated in ways that are going to make it really hard to put the genie back in the bottle. And here's one just narrow problem that we find ourselves in right now. One of the reasons why Merrick Garland probably didn't release or almost certainly didn't release any more information on the Epstein files is because of this longstanding rule within this prosecutor's office and all prosecutors' offices for the most part, which is the sort of put up or shut up standard, which means if you're investigating somebody and you can release information on them only if you quote unquote put up, meaning if you're going to press charges on them, then you could release a ton of information to back up those charges. But we've generally believed that it's not fair to release documentation and background information about people that you don't charge, because if you're going to put up, if you can't put up with charges in an indictment, then you shouldn't start selecting information to impugn somebody's character. Obviously, everything's out the window with Trump, and every norm possible is being violated. But this is going to be a hard one to walk back, and I think for in the future. Both Democrats and Republicans, we're going to start to see the selective leaking of law enforcement information. And obviously there's a ton of activity on this front outside of Epstein. Trump and his housing team have been releasing information to go after any political enemies on things like mortgage fraud, while looking the other way when their own supporters do the very same things, if not worse. Never mind, we could talk forever about what they're doing with the pardon power, which is a more extreme and obscene version of all this. But we are finding ourselves in some unprecedented territory. And I don't know if we get to the point where we could truly move on from this era, what's going to be left of hundreds of years of legal tradition in this country that has kept us on a relatively stable path when it comes to the rule of law in this country. So we're in a bad place. Trump, on the Epstein front, Trump is rattled. He views this as a mortal threat, clearly, and he's doing everything possible to try to distract, punish people, reward the people like Maxwell who can have his back. I mean, he's pulling every trick possible. That's where we are right now. Well, let's move on to Joe Rogan, who, he's been flirting with criticizing Trump. And here's one clip where I think he went about as far as he's gone over the past year in 2025. This is from a recent podcast.
Then they start showing up at Home Depot. Instead of looking for gangbangers, looking for criminals and cartel members, they go to whatever's easiest pickings so they can get numbers up. There's do you know Ed Calderon? Do you know who he is? He worked, he was a Mexican military guy who now is an American citizen, but he reports extensively on the cartels and just was telling me some horror stories about ICE raids. And one of them was they took this guy who had been brought over here when he was a baby, but didn't have American citizenship. His family, came over here illegally, lived here for 20 years, can't speak Spanish. They deport him. send him to Tijuana.
Can't speak Spanish.
Can't speak Spanish. Does not speak Spanish. He is essentially an American citizen. He just never lived anywhere else. He just doesn't have the paperwork. He's not a criminal. They sent him over to Tijuana, and now he has to live in Mexico. He doesn't know what the fuck to do. He's on the streets. Has no idea. He doesn't have any money.
So, I know a lot of people have strong feelings about Rogan, but it's better late than never on a lot of this stuff. And I think it's important to, keep the door open and bring these people back in. And I think it can often be frustrating. I was watching Dave Schultz earlier in 2025 when he had the Pod Save guys on, and Schultz was like, I feel like Trump lied to me. And he was like incredulous that he felt like he was being lied to. And then I thought about it and I was like, wait a minute, didn't you release your endorsement at the same time that Trump was talking about the Haitians in Springfield and saying they were eating cats and dogs? And weren't you at Madison Square Garden when he repeated that lie? You had ample reason, that one egregious lie being one of a million, to know that this guy was a liar. So there's a part of me that's like, yeah, you all should know better. And then there's the other part of me was like, that's not effective politics, right? Yes, everybody should know better. Yes, there's ample evidence that Trump is a liar, selfish, chaotic, and he's governing in precisely the ways that a selfish chaos agent would do, with an added amount of cruelty. I think like what a lot of people had expected was maybe a more extreme version of term one. But what we're seeing right now is that he elevated people like Stephen Miller, who have a level of cruelty that even Trump himself, left to his own devices, might not be pushing. But now he's enabling all these people around him. And it's indistinguishable, right? Like what's innately Trump, what's a Stephen Miller project, what's a Bannon project. It doesn't really matter at this point. The buck stops with him. And right now, a lot of people are having buyer's remorse. And I think for those of you listening, this podcast is about welcoming people into the 10th of the Democratic Party, convincing people to be Democrats, vote for Democrats. I feel you when it comes to the frustration of like, now you're seeing Trump for who he is, but you have to suppress that feeling when it comes to persuading people and just say, yes, welcome to the conversation. And yes, that is cool. And we need to be more humane and we need to rebuild our values brick by brick in this country. Another story that caught my attention was in the Bulwark. And this is a very, speaking of immigration, this is from Will Sommer, December 29th in the Bulwark. And the headline is Trump administration scores visa for founder of Russian propaganda outlet. So this is all about Lauren Chen, who left the United States in July in disgrace. Her company was Tenet Media, which was like a MAGA supergroup, which brought together people like Tim Pool, Benny Johnson, Dave Rubin, and they were exposed in 2024 by the FBI as a Russian media front. We covered this here, and was receiving money from Russia to promote Russian content. There was a September 2024 indictment from the Southern District that targeted the people in and around Chen and her husband, and they're a Canadian couple. And they were described in the indictment as allegedly scheming with RT employees to direct $10 million to Tenet, and even created a fictional persona to mislead one pundit. And so she lost her work visa in this country. And what the Bulwark has reported is that the Trump administration has now gotten her visas, bringing her back. So somehow the gentleman that Rogan was talking about, tax-paying, hardworking guy, been here his whole life, those people were deported, right? The people, everybody from whether it's a scientist at MIT, doctor, to people doing landscaping, to working in meat processing plants, to working in the Mexican restaurant in your neighborhood, like those people were deporting. Members of our community who are just trying to get by, do their jobs, right? In some cases, kids too. But we're bringing back into the country people who are funneling Russian propaganda in our country. Those are the immigration priorities of this country, of this administration. And so when people start saying it's about the rule of law, it's about our way of life, yada yada, point them in the direction of this and be like, well, okay, your stated purpose, and this is Miller's stated purpose of enforcing immigration, is to preserve American culture and our way of life. Well, how does this preserve the American culture? Bringing a Canadian propagandist who's funneling Russian money to our country to manipulate us. How is that preserving our way of life? So that's where we are right now. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about some really, really bad numbers for Trump. We're going to talk about some criticism that he's getting from the right. We're going to talk about a measles outbreak, some strange comments from Nick Fuentes, and we'll talk AI. We'll talk more right-wing infighting, all of this when we get back. Resolutions come and go, but growth, real lasting growth, it takes time. That's why I love Nutrafol, and I love that they aren't promising a miracle in 30 days. They're here to help you grow your hair and confidence from within, one day at a time. And Nutrafol is the #1 dermatologist-recommended hair growth supplement brand trusted by over 1.5 million people. Nutrafol has multiple formulations designed to target the many root causes of thinning, like stress and hormones, as they evolve throughout different life stages and lifestyles, such as from post-childbirth to menopause, giving your body what it needs to grow. And Nutrafol's supplements are peer-reviewed, NSF content certified, and clinically tested to measure results in growth, quality, and strength, helping you reach your hair growth goals with confidence. So see thicker, stronger, faster growing hair with less shedding in 3 to 6 months with Nutrafol. For a limited time, Nutrafol is offering our listeners $10 off your first month subscription and free shipping when you go to Nutrafol.com and enter the code MAJORITY. Find out why Nutrafol is the best-selling hair growth supplement at Nutrafol.com. That's spelled Nutrafol.com. Promo code MAJORITY. That's Nutrafol.com. Promo code MAJORITY. Here's something that keeps me up at night. Our kids are the first generation growing up on ultra-processed foods, and the long-term effects, we're only beginning to understand them. That's exactly why Hiya exists, to give parents a real solution in a market flooded with products that prioritize candy-like appeal over actual nutrition. Some children's vitamins on the market today contain up to 7 grams of sugar per serving and are stuffed with artificial additives and petroleum-based dyes. Hiya took the opposite approach. 0 sugar, 0 gummy junk, just clean nutrition. And the crazy things, kids actually love them. The taste, the experience, all of it. What makes Hiya different is how thoroughly it's designed. They look at what modern kids are actually eating or not eating and formulated around those specific nutritional gaps. Working alongside pediatricians and nutrition scientists, Hiya created a super-powered chewable vitamin that packs 12 organic fruits and vegetables plus 15 essential vitamins and minerals into every dose. The ingredient list is clean, non-GMO, vegan, dairy-free, allergy-free, gelatin-free, nut-free. They've thought of everything. I love Hiya, and so many of the kids in my life, including my cousins, nephews, etc., they love it even more. This is definitely a must for any parent. And here's something every parent needs to hear. If getting your kids to eat vegetables feels like an impossible daily battle, Hiya's new Kids Daily Greens plus Superfoods is a total game changer. It's basically chocolate milk stuffed with veggies. It's a green powder that's packed with 55 plus whole food source ingredients. Just mix in 1 scoop with milk or any non-dairy beverage and watch them actually enjoy something that's fueling their growing bodies. We've worked out a special deal with Hiya for their best-selling children's vitamin. Receive 50% off your first order. To claim this deal, you must go to hiyahealth.com/majority. This deal is not available through their regular website, so go to hiyahealth.com/majority. That's hiyahealth/majority, and get your kids the full body nourishment they need to grow into healthy adults. All right. Well, we often talk about trends that are bad, but Derek Thompson has helpfully illuminated some positive trends happening in this country. And I'll quote from his tweet summarizing some work he's done. He says, I think this was a really bad year for American politics, a mediocre year for the American economy, and an exceptional year for America. In 12 months, you got the largest decline in the murder rate ever recorded, huge declines in traffic fatalities, drug overdoses, and suicide, first ever personalized gene editing treatment and breakthroughs in HIV and cancer therapy, continued advances in GLP-1 technology that seems to reduce weight and inflammation and a bunch of other stuff, declines in teen anxiety and despair, a surge in self-driving car technology, and all this happened in a period when both the S&P 500 and inflation-adjusted median wages hit record highs. Now, those are all awesome, and so that's great. I do think there are a lot of negative trends that he doesn't talk about. particularly on the educational front, like investing in our future. And I did an episode of the Lost Debate show. So if you go to the Lost Debate podcast, like 2 weeks ago, it was either 2 or 3 weeks ago, where I illuminated a lot of those trends, which are very scary and about as bad as they've been in a long time. But what he's saying is directionally true on a lot of issues, is that, hey, there's a lot more going on that's positive than one would think. Yet Trump's approval rating is lower than anyone after 1 year, any president, even lower than Biden's when he left office. And this also comes as a new Gallup poll finds that 24% of Americans are satisfied and 74% are dissatisfied with the way things are going in the United States. So what's happening here? Well, I think this is the kind of politics that dominated the Biden administration too, which was, I have a lot of issues with a lot of things Biden did, especially towards the end of his presidency, but he was presiding over an economy that was recovering and growing and performing much better than nearly, if not every OECD country, like every other economically developed country. Yet the perceptions of the economy were very poor, and he was dealing with that. Now Trump has, I think, presided over a country that defied my own prediction of a recession this year. Yes, there are plenty of problems with the economy, but there are also a lot of trends that are better than I would have expected a year in, especially given what I think are some rather terrible policy decisions and just a general way that he's carried about economic and other decision making. So why is he so unpopular? Well, I think it's partially a reflection of a politics where they overpromised. They're going to do this to inflation. It's going to be the best this or the best that. I also think it's a reflection of an America that in a material sense might be heading in one direction, but in a spiritual sense is heading in a different direction, where people are just anxious. They're uncertain about the future. There's an erosion of civic norms and community. People are just generally getting less and less happy, less and less purposeful. And Trump has certainly done very little to try to speak to those concerns, right? He has done the, what they criticize Biden for is saying like everything's actually better than you think it is. They do that on steroids, right? There's also just the sense of how Trump is carrying himself. And Karl Rove, of all people, wrote about this. I believe this is from the Wall Street Journal. And this is what Karl Rove had to say. Speaking of Trump, he said, his pace is unrelenting. He throws at reporters so much fluff, personal sides, fulminations about adversaries, real and imagined, commentary on culture and self-congratulation, that the press and the public often ignore important things. This pace is also unsustainable. There are signs that the public is tiring of this hyperbole and insatiable desire for retribution. Increasingly, they may hear only the offensive or cruel things he says. Has the president convinced himself that he doesn't need to sell his policies and actions? It appears that he believes he can will people into agreeing with him by claiming his achievements are the biggest, best, and most amazing in American history. He's gone way too far by slapping his name on buildings, the Donald J. Trump and the John F. Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts, and government programs, the Navy's Trump-class battleship. He might receive a fawning reaction from his MAGA base, but the average American finds such narcissism off-putting. So, of all people, I think Rove puts it best. We didn't even talk about this Kennedy stuff, but it's in keeping with the Reiner thing. He changes the name to the Kennedy Center, adds his name to it. It's beyond tacky. But then you had the tragic death of a Kennedy this week, and he's attacking the Kennedy family while all of this is going on. I mean, he is a national disgrace. He's embarrassing. And a lot of his hardcore supporters are for the first time starting to truly get embarrassed. And the question is, will it stick? Some of these are people after January 6th or grab them by the pussy were embarrassed. Let's see how long this embarrassment stays. One other thing that's an embarrassment is our public health policy. The U.S. has surpassed 2,000 measles cases for the first time in 30 years. So this is just quietly happening, is that we have a measles, I don't know if we call it an outbreak, but a massive uptick in measles in this country. And we can all, we all have a sense of where this is coming from, right? Who's running HHS? Who are the people around him? What are they doing? How are they talking about vaccines? How different state policymakers are following the lead? The cultural movement also that is RFK's movement. I mean, it all comes together, and it threatens the children of those parents, but also obviously if you have an outbreak, that threatens people who are vaccinated as well. So it is a real problem. So let's keep going here and take a look at what I alluded to here with Nick Fuentes. And this is what we call the sort of right-wing infighting corner, which we've been hitting every week. Nick Fuentes had this to say about Newsom versus Vance, like the potential Newsom versus Vance presidential election. Physiognomy, and I'll define that in a second, is real. Post-physique, it's handsome Thursday. I only believe in beauty and aesthetics, exclamation point. I have no idea what any of that means. JD Vance equals fat subhuman. Newsom mogs him to death. I would vote for him 100 times over just because he's handsome. No, not like that. You have to vote for the Republican. I don't know what any of this really means, but he's obviously trolling Vance. There's been a back and forth over, Vance and Fuentes, where Vance told Fuentes to eat shit. It's just weird. I think that there's like a weird subculture to the Fuentes talk. I was looking online. It's not just Fuentes. He uses words like mog, physiognomy. I had to look up physiognomy, and this is what AI tells me it means. It says physiognomy is the ancient practice of assessing a person's character, personality, or temperament from their outer appearance, particularly facial features, though it also involves the body and skull shape. So this is, I guess, a thing online. People are throwing around that term and assessing people based on their looks explicitly. Very strange. Mark Levin and Megyn Kelly have gone at it. He called her Grandma Groiper, and he said Meg Kelly, whose ratings were so bad on NBC she became a laughingstock, was canned for promoting blackface on Halloween. You see, she was always a degenerate bigot. This is why she's cool with Candace Owens and Jack Posobiec. This is why she slobbers over Katarlson. She's also of the woke Reich, the queen of the modern Klan. More to come. Kelly responded, "You're just upset because I'm not afraid of you or your baseless slurs. You're an old, irrelevant, bitter, angry man who could never make it on Fox News primetime." So they're fighting. Megyn Kelly and Bari Weiss also are fighting. I'm going to get into that. We're going to take another quick break. I'm going to get into their fight. I'm also going to give you a deep, deep dive on this CBS Weiss controversy, and then we'll talk a little AI when we get back.
Big moments deserve less stress and more confidence. When ED shows up in the bedroom, Hims helps you keep your cool and focus on what matters most, the moment, not the worry. Through Hims, you can access personalized prescription treatment options for ED like Hard Mints and SexRx plus Climax Control if prescribed. Hims offers access to ED treatment options ranging from trusted generics that cost 95% less than brand names to Hard Mints if prescribed. You shouldn't have to go out of your way to feel like yourself. Hims brings expert care straight to you with 100% online access to personalized treatment plans that put your goals first. This isn't one-size-fits-all care that forgets you in the waiting room. It's your health and goals put first, with real medical providers making sure you get what you need to get results. Think of Hims as your digital front door that gets you back to your old self with simple 100% online access to trusted treatments for ED and more, all in one place. To get simple online access to personalized, affordable care for ED, weight loss, and more, visit hims.com/majority. That's hims.com/majority for your free online visit. hims.com/majority. Actual price will depend on product and subscription plan. Featured products include compounded drug products, which the FDA does not approve or verify for safety, effectiveness, or quality. Prescription required. See website for details, restrictions, and important safety information.
One thing related to this Vance versus Newsom fight is Newsom has been tweeting out sort of unflattering pictures of Vance. And this gets to something I wrote about a week or two ago on my Substack, where I actually broke some ground. I released a memo that David Axelrod wrote to Barack Obama in December 2006, as Obama was going off to Hawaii on vacation to decide whether he was going to run for president that first time. This is when Obama was still a senator. And Ax wrote this long memo basically outlining like this notion of like what the electorate is going to be looking for at that period of time. And so I include the memo, and then I summarize it and give my take as to why it's relevant today. And, essentially what Ax was saying was that whenever there's a two-term incumbent or just a president who's like dominating the sort of conversation, but especially two-term incumbents, the electorate is always looking to remedy whatever they view as the shortcomings of the person leaving the office, even if that person is popular. So in the case of Clinton was popular, but the electorate course corrected from Clinton sex scandals to a family values candidate in George W. Bush. Obama eventually was very popular, and the electorate wound up going with somebody very different than Obama, where Obama was fastidious and, used storing rhetoric and pre-cleared talking points. So it was very careful. Obviously, Trump was everything but that. And there's a whole sweeping version of this. Eisenhower was old, JFK was young, Nixon and Ford were corrupt, Carter was young, was the sort of like peanut farmer, the honest peanut farmer from Georgia. Reagan and George H.W. Bush were old, and Clinton was young. So you get the picture. The reason why I quoted this now, and you could read about it at realravigupta.substack.com, and you could subscribe for free right now, it's the post titled "The Most Important Memo of the 21st Century." The reason why I quote it now is because there's this talk out there that we need our asshole. Democrats need our asshole. The internet troll, somebody who's going to mix it up on the internet and dunk on Republicans and insult people and things like that. And I think that's what Newsom. That's at least his theory. This week he's tweeting like unflattering pictures of Vance and talking about Vance's looks, and he's making fun of people, and he's sending out all kinds of memes against Trump and all that. And I understand why that's popular, and probably he was popular with some people in this audience. I am skeptical that that's what the electorate is going to be looking for, is just somebody to do a Trump impersonation. And right now Vance is doing his Trump impersonation, and Newsom is doing his own spin on it from the left. I think that they're going to want to correct for the years of Trump. Right. So they're going to want, and what could this look like? Well, Trump is tearing down institutions. Maybe they'll want somebody who wants to build them up, who's an institutionalist. Trump is, always online. Maybe they want somebody more focused on the everyday and more focused on solving their problems. Trump is incredibly petty and selfish and partisan. Maybe they want somebody who's a unifier, maybe somebody kinder who has a moral framework that they can point to. You get the picture. So I think Vance and Newsom are learning the wrong lessons. They're thinking about the lessons of the last election, not the lessons ahead. They're not skating to where the puck is going. And I would keep an eye out for that. But let's get to this Megyn Kelly versus Bari Weiss situation and all the controversy around Bari Weiss. Let's start with this clip of Megyn Kelly. I think this was at that conference, whatever it's called, the Erica Kirk conference. Let's go to the clip.
There was also some response where it seemed like that call was being co-signed by the new head of CBS News, Bari Weiss, and I wanted to know if you wanted to respond to that as well.
So it's a similar situation with Bari. None of this is about them calling me out for anything I've said or haven't said, or it's certainly not about Erica Kirk, as Ben tried to make it sound last night. It's about Israel. Those two are very pro-ardent Israel activists, which is fine, but they don't get to dictate how the rest of us feel about Israel or what we do with respect to our friends and our friends' opinions on Israel. And I'll tell you, Bari Weiss wants to couch herself as Erica's protector, Erica's defender. She's retweeting the Ben speech saying anybody who doesn't call out conspiracy theorists is a coward. Erica Kirk barely knows Bari Weiss. Bari doesn't know anything about Erica. Bari Weiss has never been to a Turning Point event. Do you guys remember her here? Standing up for what we believe in when Charlie was alive? I don't remember her standing up for our principles. I don't remember her defending Charlie the many times he was called a racist or an anti-Semite. I really don't remember that at all. What I do remember is she had Erica Kirk come on one town hall in which Bari Weiss tried to play both super important VIP executive and super fabulous star anchor at her new network CBS. Pro tip, Bari, that's no way to win friends at your new organization, to try to steal all the hosting abilities of the on-air talent. So good luck with that.
This is really Scorpion versus Tarantula, Iran-Iraq war. Like, Kissinger said of the Iran-Iraq war, it's a shame they both can't lose. That's how I think about this fight. But more importantly, I think it starts to reveal some cracks. Obviously, we've been charting this over the course of the past few months within the right-wing coalition. And the big question that you just have to keep your eye on over the course of the next year or two is what this is going to mean for the midterms and most importantly for JD Vance. Right now, everybody's lining up behind JD Vance for the most part. So the question is, can he keep this coalition that's fractured together? Most of these people claim to still be JD Vance supporters. And so it's going to be a tall order from him. Not impossible, but it's going to be a tall order for him to keep everybody together. And it's getting harder and harder as time goes on. There's more controversy involving Bari Weiss. So Bari Weiss is the head of the Free Press and also a senior news official, editor-in-chief of CBS News. And she found herself in some controversy. So I'm going to do a deep dive on this to help explain this for you. So on Sunday, December 21st, CBS announced it was pulling a scheduled 60-minute segment just hours before it was set to air. And this was a segment that focused on a Venezuelan series of men deported by the U.S. to El Salvador's Socote prison earlier this year. We've talked about that prison. Bari Weiss, editor-in-chief of CBS News, made the decision to delay this segment, saying it required additional reporting. The move immediately sparked controversy, especially after the show's correspondent, Sharon Alfonsi, accused wife of spiking the story for political reasons in an internal memo that was widely reported. Shortly after the segment was pulled, a Canadian CBS affiliate's streaming app aired the piece. That version made it online where you could see it. And the leak intensified scrutiny of Weiss's justification and raised broader questions about her editorial independence. And this was all about that prison, and it's the largest prison facility in Central America. The Trump administration deported Venezuelan men to Socote in March, claiming they were members of the gang Tren de Aragua. Human rights watchdogs have reportedly documented abuse and violations there. We've talked about those. And at least one man, Kilmar Abrego Garcia, was mistakenly deported. The administration later released all Venezuelan detainees and returned them to Venezuela in a U.S.-brokered prisoner exchange. The context here is that in October, Paramount Skydance, which is CBS's owner, named Bari Weiss editor-in-chief after they acquired the Free Press. And the Paramount Skydance is trying to purchase the HBO and CNN assets. So all of this is going on at the same time. So there are lots of questions about what Weiss did. Is she trying to stay in Trump's favor? Trump has criticized CBS News and 60 Minutes by name. So is she trying to keep him happy so that she can keep the merger alive? Because the CBS is and Paramount are competing with Netflix, who currently seems to be in the lead to get the assets for HBO and CNN. So who knows? But here's what Sharon Alfonsi said, the 60 Minutes correspondent, said the story had been screened 5 times. It was cleared by CBS attorneys and approved by standards and practices. Alfonsi argued, quote, pulling it now after every vigorous internal check has been met is not an editorial decision. It's a political one. She emphasized that the team requested interviews and responses from DHS, the White House, the State Department, the administration declined. And in her words, government silence is a statement, not a veto. Weiss responded that she delayed the segment because it lacked sufficient original reporting and it failed to adequately present the Trump administration's perspective. She argued that the story didn't advance anything unique. She wanted on-the-record responses from administration officials, criminal records of the deported men, quotes from Kristi Noem, a clearer explanation of the administration's legal justification for the deportations, and whether any officials now regretted invoking the Enemies Act. So there's a lot going on here. And I think that, of course, there's always justification for asking for more reporting, going deep, but I think there's a lot of reasons why Weiss doesn't get the benefit of the doubt here. Number one is, from what I understand, she declined to meet with the reporter here. So it seems like before you even get into the issues of the conflict of interest and whether she's carrying water for Trump and whether there's something untoward going on, she appears to be a part-time editor-in-chief. She's dipping in and out, coming in super, super late on the story and spiking it, and then not doing the work to really sit down with the people who report to her to work through this with them and meet with them in person and talk through it. So she just seems like a bad manager to start things off. But I think it's worse than that. Specifically, she says that the administration, she gives a substantive argument. She says that the administration, the Trump administration, has made a legal argument that detainees are due judicial review. And this is really misleading because the administration has claimed that judicial review was obvious only after the Supreme Court smacked them down. They deported detainees without judicial review. They later concluded that they should have provided it only when they had to. And their most consistent argument made in court by Bondi was that detainees should not get judicial review. So that's the core facts of the story. And they drove months of coverage. The Free Press itself actually touched on it a little bit. So for Weiss to frame this as a legitimate legal dispute means that she doesn't even understand her team's reporting. There are also multiple outlets that report Weiss missed early screenings and interviewed at the final stages. I talked about how this is bad editorial process. It was posted to CBS social media. She pulled it really late. And you just can't ignore the broader context here. Trump has publicly bragged that CBS's new owners, Larry and David Ellison, support him and promise more favorable coverage. He's complained that CBS hasn't been nice to him yet. And they're competing with Netflix for Warner Brothers. So that context is key. So there's all kinds of pressures going on here. Weiss doesn't deserve the benefit of the doubt. She doesn't seem to understand the core legal argument. She seems to be wanting to give the Trump administration an opportunity to insert a veto into this process potentially, and is a bad manager at that. So there's just a lot going on here. And so I think this is really untoward. I think this is a really sad example, a la the Washington Post, of a once great American institution being destroyed by people who have no regard for the traditions and objectivity of journalism in this country. Like Weiss came up and became prominent because she critiqued what she viewed as bias within the media. And in some cases, I would agree with some of the things she was saying. And now she's on the other side now, working in service of power, working in service of oligarchs, working to inject herself into every story, literally herself, as Megyn Kelly pointed out, but also like mucking things up in a chaotic fashion, doing things that at least seem on the surface to serve the powerful at the expense of the powerless. Like people literally pulled off the streets and sent to a horrific prison. And that's where she is now. It's a sad example of where we are. One last piece here is, we've been talking about artificial intelligence here, and there have just been a sea of articles about artificial intelligence that Jason and I have been talking about. One is in the New York Times. When AI took my job, I bought a chainsaw. That was this week. Politico, data center boom creates conundrum for the GOP. Politico, America needs a tech skeptic in the 2028 race, which is what we talked about. The Wall Street Journal, spooked by AI and layoffs. White-collar workers see their security slip away. Politico, data centers have a political problem, and big tech wants it. So there's a lot happening on the AI front here. And I'll quote from the first article, when AI took my job, I bought a chainsaw, which is by Brian Grow in the New York Times. He said, in towns like mine, outsourcing and automation consume jobs, then purpose, then people. Now the same forces are climbing the economic ladder, yet Washington remains fixated on global competition and growth, as if New York will always appear to replace what's been lost. Maybe it will, but given AI's rapacity, it seems far more likely that it won't. If our leaders fail to prepare, the silence that once followed the closing of factory doors will spread to office parks and home offices, and the grief long borne by the working class may soon be borne by us all. This is a warning. And as I talked about with Jason a couple weeks ago, J.D. Vance and Trump are so in bed with AI, this tool that could be eviscerating jobs in our country and leading to all sorts of problems that I'll talk about in a second. Democrats need to be clear on this question. They need to be on the side of people over these models and these tech oligarchies who are cozying up to Trump, have no guardrails, and are in an arms race, unregulated arms race with Trump, with huge implications for our lives. And they're throwing tons of money around. And I think a lot of you in this audience don't know how they're manipulating our own Democratic representatives. In primary after primary, heading into this midterm, the AI PACs are throwing tons of money in, trying to intimidate Democrats. And in some cases, you can't even see what they're doing, because the candidates that you might like might just tone things down a little bit, right? They'd just be less likely to have a strident message on AI. And a lot of these AI companies are saying, hey, look at what crypto did, because crypto was very successful in destroying a lot of people in the primaries and even in the general election. So they're saying, look what crypto did. We can do that to you with these AI PACs. But as I've said, AI is different. Crypto doesn't affect a lot of Americans, whereas AI could affect all of us. And I think there are 3 specific things that we need to be thinking about, and you should be looking for your candidates to have clear, unapologetically populist, pro-human messages on. Number 1 is safety. Somehow, we're supposed to believe that these tools are so powerful that they can cure cancer, but they're not going to create things like bioweapons and hacking tools, things like that. Never mind the safety of our children, right? And this is an area where there actually is some alignment from some people on the right and the left, where we can come together on this and turn those folks into allies in this fight for humanity, but also turn them against people like Trump and Vance. We should be very clear on what we need to do for safety purposes. Second is jobs. By and large, most of these people who run these companies are very clear when you get them in interviews that these tools are going to eviscerate tons of jobs. And then when you ask them what's going to come next, they're super vague about it. Right? That's crazy. And so we need to be on the record early and come up with bold proposals to either slow these things down or prepare for the next phase of where we are. And we need to consistently paint the heads of these companies as the villains that they are. And then the third is bailouts, which is something to keep an eye out for 2026. So if I had one prediction for 2026, it would be on the lookout for stealth bailouts of these AI companies. I think that, Jensen Huang, Sam Altman, Elon Musk, Google, Microsoft, if a lot of these predictions of a bubble bursting happen, we're already seeing all kinds of weird economic activity happening in the AI front. Trump is so cozy with these companies, and he really desperately needs the economy to stay roaring, which it's kind of meowing at this point, but it needs to keep it moving in some semblance of an okay direction. The only thing propping it up right now is the Magnificent Seven and the AI companies. You could see him doing stealth moves to prop up these companies, signing a deal to build this there and loaning money here, or conducting a deal there, approving this merger. Just be on the lookout for corporate socialism on the AI front. He did this recently when he approved the chip deal for NVIDIA to China, right? Like, he basically sold out our national security to keep Jensen Huang happy. So I think these 3 areas, safety, jobs, and the coming bailout, are 3 really important lines in the sand that we need to draw for the future of humanity, but also are really prime opportunities for Democrats to go on the offensive in a populist way. And a lot of these people, I'm hearing in some of these primaries that some people are arguing, Biden or Obama was mean to Elon Musk, and we weren't friendly enough with the tech companies, and we need to bring them back into the fold. I think that is crazy. Those tech companies have shown who they are. They're not, they don't think of this country first. They don't think of our values. They'll pay lip service when things like January 6th happens, but whenever their bottom line is at risk, they'll sell all of us out. And we've witnessed that over the past year, and we should have a long memory for them and remember who they are when we get back into power. And as we get back into power, they should not be our friends. They should be our enemies. We should paint them for who they are, and we should make sure that everybody who supports us or who could conceivably support us knows that we're fighting for them over the powerful, over these machines. So that's what I leave you with in 2025. I think that's going to be the defining issue of this midterm election, and we need to be on the lookout for the candidates in the Democratic Party who are responsible on this. And you have to look really hard, because some of this stuff is hidden by design. It's hidden. It's not all out in the open yet. So be on the lookout for people who are public and strident and bold on these issues. So that's where I leave you. Have a great rest of, for those of you on video, have a great rest of 2025 and party responsibly tonight. If you're on video, you could follow us at Majority54 wherever you get your podcasts. And for those of you on audio, you could still check us out on YouTube. And for all of you, you can get to my Substack at realravigupta.substack.com. And I think that's all we got. So remember, we all have a platform. Make sure to use yours today.